The reason. Jesus had to meet Moses and Elijah at the Mount of Transfiguration. Sensing the weight of his upcoming mission, Jesus took a moment to withdraw for intimate prayer with the Father. He chose 3 of his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, and led them up a high mountain. While the mountain's name isn't specified, it became the backdrop for one of the most profound events in the New Testament. As Jesus prayed, something extraordinary began to happen. His appearance transformed, his face shone like the sun, and his clothes gleamed a dazzling white. This moment, known as the Transfiguration, unveiled Jesus' divine glory for the first time to these 3 disciples. They saw not just Jesus the man, but the Son of God in all his celestial radiance, a vision reserved for this sacred occasion. Peter, ever the impulsive one, was in awe of what he saw. Overwhelmed by the experience, he suggested building shelters for Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, trying to hold on to that glorious moment. Yet Peter's understanding was still incomplete. Jesus' mission was not about staying in a fleeting moment of glory on earth, but about fulfilling a greater purpose through the cross and resurrection. The Transfiguration took place shortly after Jesus and his disciples visited Caesarea Philippi, a significant location known for its temples dedicated to Roman gods, including one for the emperor. It was a hub of pagan worship, filled with idols and symbols of earthly power. In this context of false gods and human authority, Jesus posed a vital question to his disciples. Who do people say that I am? They shared various opinions circulating about him. Some believed he was John the Baptist, others thought he was Elijah or one of the prophets. But Jesus wasn't interested in public opinion. He turned to them and asked, "But who do you say that I am?" In that pivotal moment, it was the faith of his closest followers that mattered most. Bold and passionate, Peter stepped forward and declared, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." This revelation, a moment of divine insight, was something Peter could not have grasped on his own. Jesus responded by affirming Peter's vital role in the future of the church. "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." As Jesus transformed before his disciples, 2 iconic figures appeared beside him: Moses and Elijah. Moses, who had led the Israelites out of Egypt and received the law on Mount Sinai, symbolized the law itself. Elijah, the powerful prophet who called Israel back to faith, represented the prophets. Together they encapsulated the entire Old Testament, the law and the prophets, both of which found their fulfillment in Jesus. The law given through Moses laid the groundwork for Israel's relationship with God, while the prophets, like Elijah, pointed toward a future hope, a Messiah who would redeem his people. Now, in the presence of Jesus, the one who would fulfill both the law and the prophets, the picture was complete. Moses and Elijah had both encountered God on mountains, Moses on Sinai and Elijah on Horeb. Centuries later, they stood with Jesus on another mountain, witnessing the next chapter of God's grand plan. This moment was the culmination of everything Israel's story had been leading to, unfolding right before the disciples' eyes. Peter, James, and John might not have fully grasped the depth of what they were witnessing, but they knew it was something extraordinary. As Peter continued to process the astonishing sight of Jesus alongside Moses and Elijah, a brilliant cloud descended, enveloping them. In biblical tradition, clouds often represented God's presence, much like the cloud that guided the Israelites during their journey through the wilderness. Exodus 13:21. From this radiant cloud came a voice that cut through the scene. "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Matthew 17:5. In that moment the disciples were struck with awe. The voice of God affirmed that Jesus was not just another prophet or teacher, but his beloved Son, echoing the declaration made at Jesus' baptism, Matthew 3:17. This reinforced Jesus' unique role as the Messiah, the chosen one of God. The command to listen to him was a vital reminder, not only for the disciples but for all of us, that Jesus is the ultimate authority, revealing God's heart and plan for humanity. Overwhelmed with awe and fear, the disciples fell face down to the ground. In ancient Hebrew tradition, encountering God's voice was profound. It carried an overwhelming sense of holiness and power, leaving no room for casual response. They stood in the presence of the living God, witnessing his Son and his glory. With Moses and Elijah now gone, all eyes turned to Jesus. The law and the prophets had fulfilled their roles, and it was now time to listen to Jesus, who would unveil the fullness of God's will. As they made their way down the mountain, Jesus turned to his disciples and issued a surprising command. They were not to tell anyone about what they had just witnessed until after he had risen from the dead. Matthew 17:9. This must have left them feeling puzzled. After such an incredible display of his glory, it seemed only natural to share the experience with others. Yet Jesus understood the importance of timing and how people tend to think. In Israel, many were eagerly anticipating a Messiah who would come to overthrow Roman rule and establish a tangible kingdom. However, Jesus' mission went far beyond that. By asking his disciples to remain silent for now, he was safeguarding the true meaning of his transfiguration. If news of this event spread too quickly, people might misinterpret his role, viewing him as a political leader instead of the suffering servant foretold in Isaiah 53. The glory he revealed on that mountain was merely a glimpse of what would follow his suffering and resurrection. The disciples needed to grasp that the path to true glory went through the cross. The concept of a Messiah who would suffer and die was still difficult for the disciples to understand. Just before the Transfiguration, Peter had rebuked Jesus when he mentioned his impending death. Matthew 16:22. Even after witnessing such divine glory, they weren't ready to fully connect the dots between suffering and glory. Jesus knew that only after his death and resurrection would they truly comprehend the significance of what they had seen. This command to keep their vision a secret wasn't about concealing the truth. It was about ensuring that the truth would be fully understood in due time. Jesus' resurrection would be the key that unlocked their understanding. Once they witnessed him rising from the dead, the meaning of the Transfiguration would become clear. They would realize that Jesus was not just a wise teacher or a political savior, but the Son of God who came to conquer sin and death itself. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.